The truth about Muammar Gaddafi's Libya. In 1951, Libya was the poorest country in the world. Gaddafi's Libya had the highest standard of living among all African countries until NATO invaded. It was ahead of Russia, Brazil, or Saudi Arabia. In Libya, the right of people for decent housing was enshrined into law. The newlyweds would receive $50,000 from the state to buy a house. In Libya, the people didn't pay for electricity. Power was completely free. Gaddafi promised, and kept his promise, to provide decent housing to every citizen, even though his own father died before getting his own home. Before Gaddafi came to power, only 1 in 5 Libyans knew how to read and write. Under him, Libya had free, comprehensive education that was world-class, and 83% of the population were literate. Libya had free healthcare, which was also world-class. The state would pay for the citizens to study abroad and to receive medical treatment abroad if that was necessary. All loans in Libya were interest-free. That was also enshrined into law. When a citizen bought a car, the state would pay half its price. The price of gas in Libya was 14 cents. Anybody who wanted to be a farmer got the opportunity to do so. The state would provide land, housing, farming equipment, and livestock. July 1st, 2011, 1.7 million Libyans went to the Green Square in Tripoli to protest NATO aggression. That's 95% of Tripoli's population and roughly a third of all population of Libya. The Central Bank of Libya was state-owned, unlike all other state banks. The Bank of Libya was not owned by a small bunch of international bankers. In 1990, Libya was made responsible for Pan Am flight blowing up over Lockerbie. As it later turned out, USA paid the main witnesses $4 million each to say what they said. You can recall the accusations against Milosevic and Saddam, which also turned out to be lies. Gaddafi was planning to circulate gold-backed dinar and stop dealing in US dollars. All financial transactions were supposed to be done only in gold-backed currency. That step caused the French President Sarkozy to call Libya the main threat to the financial stability of the world. The first thing the rebels did when they took Benghazi is open a privately owned central bank, just like the banks that Russian and Western banks are, owned by a small bunch of international bankers that print completely unbacked paper money, which they give us at interest, which means we will never have enough money to pay back the interest, and the debts will be inherited by our children and by our children's children. Differently from other world leaders like Cameron, Obama, Gaddafi ran the country in the interests of the people. Under Gaddafi, Libya had no foreign debt. Now you know why Libyan people supported Gaddafi, and now you know who was behind the NATO bombing campaign. Libyans had more than people in other countries. They had a leader who stood up for the interests of the people and used the wealth of the country for their benefit and not for the benefit of international business. If not for the wage slavery and loan slavery, we could also have more. We are being literally robbed by a bunch of bankers and politicians. They're paying. We have been enslaved. By various estimates, about 30,000 Libyans have been killed by the rebels and the NATO bombing campaign. Gaddafi considered parliamentary democracies to be corrupt by their very nature and thought that people should represent their own interests directly. After I always believed lies about this man, reading his green book has opened my eyes. I can no longer sit by and watch how people and countries are being demonized and then destroyed. And the prostitute media are covering up these foul deeds of the international business. I refuse to pay taxes to the criminals responsible for this. Stop. Don't pay for their bombs. Refuse to pay their taxes. Stop. Don't listen to propaganda of lies. We need to show solidarity with the oppressed peoples. If we continue to silently look how sovereign states and human rights are being violated and do nothing, we become complicit in this. Moreover, we could be the next target.